Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game you guys requested from 2025 World Blitz Championship. Both the Blitz and Rapid are now over. Magnus is the double champ, and this game is interesting for quite a few reasons. Like I said, a couple of you have requested it, but also this particular opponent, Xiangzhi, that Magnus Carlsen, I wouldn't say he's his kryptonite or anything like that, but it's been a while since Magnus beat him. Last time they played in 2017, they actually played 2 games over the board, and beat Magnus twice. He defeated him in the World Rapid Championship with the black pieces, and also he eliminated Magnus Carlsen from the FIDE World Cup. Also with the black pieces. So now Magnus has the black pieces. Maybe that's the thing. So yeah, it's quite an interesting game, and also it happened in round 14. If you guys remember, Magnus Carlsen lost to Haik Martirosyan. He knocked over the pieces, and then he just didn't have time to pick them up, and then he pressed the clock, and he got disqualified that round. So that was in round 14. Then he won 1 game, and now this is round 16 of the World Blitz Championship. So let's check it out. You already know Magnus won. This will sort of be an insight into how he actually won, because this was not easy. So Magnus, some 8 years have passed since he last faced Boo over the board, and like I said, lost 2 times. Now has black. Boo opens with knight to f3, goes for the Reti opening. We have knight to f6 and pawn to c4. We have pawn to b6. This is the 4th most popular continuation. Usually you will see g6, then maybe e6, then you'll see pawn to c5. Pawn to b6 is the 4th most popular continuation, but still at this level, I'm pretty sure they all know it very, very well. And Magnus has, I would say, maybe painful memories of this move, because he lost to Sergei Karyakin in 2012 Tata Steel, where Karyakin played pawn to b6. We have knight to c3. Bishop to b7 and pawn to d4. We have pawn to e6 and pawn to a3. This is the Petrosyan variation, and it is a very, very common setup. We have knight to e4. As the bishop is now on b7, you can immediately claim the center. Knight captures. We have bishop captures on e4 and bishop to g5, attacking Magnus's queen on d8, bishop to e7, and we have a trade of bishops as well. Bishop captures, queen captures, and pawn to e3, pawn to d6, and now bishop to d3. Offering a trade of light square bishops, we have bishop back to b7, Magnus declines, and castles kingside. We have knight to d7, and here there is a game where knight to d2 was played, preparing pawn to f3 and e4, but here Boo strikes with pawn to b4 right away, and it is now as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. Okay, Magnus strikes with pawn to a5, challenges the queenside pawn structure, and now queen to c2, leaving the knight on f3 sort of undefended. It's defended by the g pawn, but usually you don't want to mess up your pawn structure in front of your king. So basically the question here is, does Magnus give up the bishop to mess up Boo's pawn structure, and then it will be bishop versus a knight with a very, very complicated game. So Magnus decides it's worth it, plays bishop captures on f3, g captures, and pawn to f5. Now limits the power of the queen-bishop battery along this diagonal. Pawn to f4, stopping any pawn to f4 for Magnus, and we have pawn to g5. Now that the king is opened up, Magnus wants to open up the position, put the rooks on the g file, maybe queen h4, get the knight to f6, and try and checkmate Boo's king. So f captures on g5, we have queen captures with check, king to h1, and now a captures on b4. Before getting the rooks over to the g file. A captures on b4, we have rook captures on a1, rook captures on a1, and now king to e7. You could also consider some other moves like rook to g8. Seems like you're threatening quite a lot here, but the white can always just play rook to a8 check, and then after you move, you trade rooks, and okay. It can be done, but Magnus goes king to e7 first, decides that the rooks will remain on the board, and now the idea, I guess, if rook g1, you will put the queen to h5, and then you will always have a check on f3, so it doesn't really do all that much for white, even though the engine likes it. The engine says it's by far the best white can play. Here we have pawn to f4. Here Boo goes for the second move recommended by the engine. We have queen to h5 and queen to g2, controlling the g file, not allowing rook to g8, and preparing queen to g7 check. So queen to g6, Magnus offers a queen trade, and Bu says, okay, we can trade, but I will control the g file. Magnus says, nope, that is nonsense. I will control the g file. We have queen to f2 and rook captures on g1. Queen captures, we have rook captures and king captures, and now no one controls the g file, so the endgame is on. It is bishop versus knight with the exact same material and pretty much the same pawn structure. 5 pawns each in the sort of middle of the board and 1 pawn each on the king side. And there are a couple of ways you could go about this endgame. You could go knight to f6, you could try and get the kings into the game, let's say king f6, king to f2, king to g6, maybe e4, and then after, let's say, captures, you would have to worry about that h pawn, so king g7, let's say b5, and you would have something like this, 2 pawn islands versus 3 pawn islands, but it's always a bishop versus a knight, so you know, it's a little bit easier to get over long distances, but only if the pawns are on light squares. If they're not, not really relevant. So after king captures on g1, we don't have king f6, rather Magnus plays pawn to c5. He wants to create those pawn islands right away, and he wants to force this pawn to remain on c4, which will make it a weakness later on. Yes, the bishop can defend it on a light square, but it also is in the way of the bishop, so the bishop will be stuck defending it. We have d captures on c5, b captures on c5, b captures, and knight captures on c5, attacking the bishop and bishop to c2. Now the bishop is nicely controlling Magnus's knight, and Magnus achieved what he wanted. 2 pawn islands versus 3 pawn islands, and knight versus bishop. So you will go after the weaknesses. This is a weakness, this is a weakness, and this is a weakness. Whereas for the bishop, the weakness is the e6 pawn and the h7 pawn. The h7 pawn you're not going to be able to get to with the bishop. So the only real weakness is the e6 pawn, but still, with the king and knight, very, very hard to get to it. Now, this position is objectively a draw. If played in a classical game, it's, 99% it ends in a draw, but with little time on the clock, not so much. And it's Magnus who is low on the clock. He has 38 seconds to Bu's 2 minutes and 8 seconds. We have king to f6. Magnus gets the king into the game. King to f2. Pawn to e5. And the idea is that, okay, you capture, Magnus gets the central control, something like king f3, king to g5. It's not, again, nothing spectacular, but maybe a little bit easier to play for black. And the knights are always a little bit trickier than bishops with little time on the clock. So we have instead king f3, pawn to h6, and king to g3. We have knight to e6, and now bishop to d3. So there is no way to win this, but Magnus, even though he's down to 30 seconds on the clock, he will try absolutely everything and anything to win this, as knight can be a little bit trickier than bishop in such positions. We have knight c5, going after the bishop, bishop back to c2, and pawn to e4. Now Magnus closes the position, and he will have to try elsewhere. We have king to f2, king g6, we have king to g3, and king to g7, king to f2, and king to f7. So Bu, of course, ready to call it a day. If Magnus is interested in a threefold repetition, king to e2, we have king to g6, and king to f2. We have king to h5 and king to g3. Knight to b7, and here Bu trying to trick Magnus, plays bishop to a4. He's hoping that Magnus plays knight c5 and goes after his bishop on a4, but if Magnus did this, it would actually be a mate in one. Bishop to e8 is checkmate, as the king and pawn are covering all of the other squares. So, of course, you're not going to do that. King to g6 is played, and now bishop to e8 with check. King to f6, and the bishop goes back. Bishop to c6, knight to a5, attacking the bishop and the pawn, and bishop to d5. So it's really almost impossible to win this game with black, because this pawn will always be defended by the bishop. And how are you reaching these two pawns? It really does seem impossible. But this is what happened. Knight b3, we have king to f2, knight to d2. Again, nothing really happening here. king to g2, and knight f3. Okay, now the king is stuck here guarding the h2 pawn, so you can't really keep it there. You can play pawn to h3, but then, again, you will have to calculate whether this is good, whether, you know, the pawn will just be worse there or not. Maybe the black king can just easily get to the pawn, then you attack it with the knight. All in all, h3 is perfectly fine. But we have king to g3, seems even better, as you're not ruining your pawn structure or anything. King to g6, and now you just have to waste a move. The problem is, how do you waste it? King to g2 is perfectly fine, and it's very, very hard to imagine why it wasn't played. You could also play king to f2 and lose the pawn, so that doesn't really make all that much sense. You could move the bishop to e6. You keep an eye on that pawn and everything is fine. But it seems that Bu forgot, with the time ticking, of course, that all three pawns are vulnerable. He was probably checking only two of them, and he played bishop to c6. And believe it or not, this one little move blunders the game, and Magnus hones in on it like a bird of prey. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move that wins here for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. Yes, you are absolutely correct. The move is a move with the knight back. In Magnus's case, it's a move with the knight forward, but it is knight to d2. So if you found this, you are a true master of the endgame, because the c4 pawn is attacked, and once that is taken care of, the real threat is knight to f1 check, which forks the king, the h2 pawn, and the e3 pawn. This is what Bu missed. And I mean, that's why we said knights are tricky bastards. And if you defend this, then, like I said, knight f1 check, king f2, whatever, then you pick up this pawn, and the outside pass pawn will, of course, be winning. So after knight d2, king to f2 by Bu. Now knight captures on c4. We have king to e2 and king to f6. So now Magnus is up a pawn, but it's still a fight. It is objectively winning, but it's always a fight. Bishop to d5. We have knight v6 attacking the bishop. Bishop to g8, sorry, and knight to d7. We have king to d2. Here, again, it's a very tricky position, but if played correctly, Magnus should win. King to d2, we have knight to c5, king to c3, and knight to d3. Now the knight is ready to go after the h2 pawn, and there's really no good way to stop it. So king to d4, trying to at least provide some counterplay. Knight to e1, we have king d5 and knight to c2. We have king captures on d6, knight captures on e3, king to c5 and knight to g2. Now going after the f4 pawn as well, king d4, knight captures on f4, and he was in this position on move 58 that Xiangzhi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. He is now down 2 pawns, and now it is a simple enough to win this game. So of course Bu will not try to prove anything here or try anything here, and now he's even the one who is lower on time. So it was really an incredible game where Magnus just played very natural moves. He opened up the g file, gave up the strong bishop for the knight just to open up the king, then managed to trade everything off against along the g file, went into bishop versus knight endgame, and or rather in this case knight versus bishop endgame, and just showed why he's the greatest endgame player ever, or maybe not ever, but he's strong. I would love to see an endgame between him and Capablanca, but we'll never get that, so we might as well enjoy it as long as Magnus is interested in playing endgames. But yeah, this is definitely a great game, and the one that definitely contributed to Magnus winning the World Blitz Championship, because after beating Radić, he defeated Bu here. And then he went 5.5 out of 6. I mean, or it was 4.5 out of 5. But all in all, it was really incredible, and he was able to win first place. So yeah, incredible endgame skills from Magnus. There's no way to beat the bishop here with the knight, but you just have to try everything, leave no stone unturned, try everything with the knight, because the bishop has only the light squares, and Bu was sure that it was perfectly fine to move the bishop to e6, but no, the e6 was fine, c6 was not, and the knight was just trickier. So yeah, really hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely done by Magnus. And now this will be the last video we're showing from the World Rapid and Blitz Championship. And if you have anything else that's happening in the chess world that you would really like to see, always do use that hashtag suggestion. So yeah, Magnus does get his revenge. It was 8 years ago that he faced Boo over the board. Now he finally beats him with the black pieces. Seems like they're just beating each other with the black pieces. So we'll see who gets the black pieces in the next game. I would like to thank Jeffrey Johnson, John Tardif, Kim Dolman, William Fuller, and Michael Cox for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you still haven't, first link in the description below. See you soon.